Welcome back to the Band Guide, where we use GarageBand to create professional sounding music. I'm your band guy, Colin, and today is another video in the Ultimate GarageBand Beginner's Guide series where we're walking through everything from the first time you open up GarageBand to you're exporting out your finished, mixed, and mastered song. And today, we're actually in the process of mixing our song. So if you've been following along, you know that we recorded a song together, we are now mixing it, and coming up, we're going to be mastering it. If you haven't seen the other videos, definitely go back and check those out and stick around for what's coming up next. But today, we're focusing on effects in GarageBand. Effects like reverb and delay. This is how you create a realistic space inside of your mix, and it's a really crucial part. This isn't something that you should skip, but a lot of people kind of just haphazardly throw on reverb because there's a slider there, so they do it and it sounds better initially, but it doesn't actually help the whole mix. As with everything that we've done, working with intentionality is what's going to take you from just kind of dull, kind of weird mixes to really, really good professional sounding mixes. GarageBand isn't what's holding you back. It's the way you use it that can hold people back. Okay, getting off my little soapbox there. And before we get into today's video, I want to give you something. In addition to this entire video series, I've also put together the Ultimate GarageBand Guide. This guide walks through recording, mixing, mastering, gear you need, shortcuts, everything, and it's completely free from the link in the description below. So be sure to pick it up. It's really going to help you out. It has a whole section on mixing that you can just quickly reference back to anytime you're actually working on your music. And it's just a downloadable guide, so you can check it anytime you want. Okay, let's go and get into our video today where we're talking about effects. Now, fundamentally, there's really only two types of effects that you need to be thinking about. Reverb, which is like when you walk into a room and there's just a whole bunch of reverb around you. You hear your voice kind of bouncing around the walls. And the delay is a little bit more specific. So delay would be a specific like repeat of a word. So think if you're at the Grand Canyon, you shout, you hear it come back. Or if you're, the other day I was walking my neighborhood and my dog got really confused because dog started barking and it was bouncing off another wall on the other side of him. And my dog was like, where are there two dogs here? What's going on, right? So that is delay when it's bouncing off something and you hear a very specific bark coming back to you. So that's delay. So we can use these two tools to kind of shape space around our mix. Now, as opposed to just slapping it on all over the place, I definitely encourage you to think less is more and that effects are better felt, not heard. You often don't necessarily need to specifically hear it, but just blending it in an intentional way can give you a much fuller sounding mix. So we're going to focus really just on two places in our mix. We're going to focus on our snare drum and our lead vocal. And those are the only two places that we're going to put effects in this mix. Now, I will go ahead and caveat that and just say that these amps here that I built in GarageBand Amp Designer, I did use a little bit. You can see right under 1% mix, or 1 on the 10% knob there. It looks like 2 on this knob. Just a little bit on there. So you can hear when I stop this guitar. There's a little bit of reverb on those, but that's just a little bit. And I would encourage you, I like to play around with those reverbs and see if they work on your song. But if you're working like a heavy metal song or something like that, do not put reverb on your amps. You need to have like the definition in between notes. So just an aside. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the drums and start with the reverb on the snare drum. So I'm going to duplicate this track by holding Option and clicking and dragging it down. And it's going to give me a fresh version of this track. And I'm going to title this Snare Verb. And then we're going to turn off everything except the snare drum over here. So now this track is just the snare track. So I've just isolated the snare track in 1 second. And now we're just going to go down to reverb here and pull up the Space Designer. This is definitely my go-to for drum sounds. Now, I actually like 2 reverbs on a snare drum. I like to have a real short reverb that's just kind of filling in the body of the snare sound, and then a longer reverb that's adding a little bit more of a tail to the snare drum. So let's start with that really short room-style reverb. Now, you can see here, there's only a few options. There's rooms, halls, plate reverbs, spring reverbs, and then we just get into kind of specific spaces. And then generally speaking, there's only these 3 types of spaces. These last 3 down here are just weird effect things that are fun if you're just playing around. But for most mixing, you want to focus on small, medium, or large spaces, and you're looking at rooms, halls, plates, and springs. So those are the only variables that you should be going through. That's already a lot of options. So first, I just want to have a really small room reverb, and I'm just trying to create a small sense of space around the snare drum. And this is what I love about reverbs is you don't necessarily have to know anything other than just try to find things that you like. And so I'm just going to try this snare chamber here. Let me see if this does what I want it to do. Yep. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, now, as opposed to just leaving it like this, you have a dry output and a reverb output. We just want this track here to be a reverb output. So here what I'm setting up is a parallel track. So this reverb, the snare verb track can just be blended in and it will only be reverb. So I don't need any of the dry snare signal on this. And now I'm just going to bring this down. We're going to solo our drums here and I'm just going to mix it up into the drums. So really loud. I want to get this till I just start to notice it and then turn it back just a little bit. And if I turn it off, notice how the snare feels a little fuller when this is in. If I turn it off, right? So that's my first snare reverb. We're gonna hold Option, click and drag this down again. Now we're gonna create a second snare reverb and I'm gonna unsolo everything but this one. I'm gonna title this snare verb long. And here, what I wanna do is have a brighter, longer reverb that extends the tail of the snare drum. So the first one was adding to the body of the snare drum. The second one is gonna extend the tail of the snare drum. So we're going down here to Space Designer. I'm going to go, and what will be best for this is a medium or large plate reverb. So I'm going to go down here and let's just try this drum plate. I'm going to bring the volume up a little bit here. I like that, but let's try one other option. Let's try a small plate and see if there's one on the longer side in the small options here. Let's try this golden vocals. That sounds better. Okay. Cool. Okay, so now what we need to do is just blend it up in. So I first hear it, then turn it down just a little bit. So this is off, this is on. Let's listen in the verse here and make sure we like this in this other section of the song.
All day long I get no work done. All day long I get what have I done? Prove my work for now.
Okay, we're gonna do one more thing, and because what's cool is that this is its own track, so if I want to change the tone of it, I can. So let's listen to this one in solo. I want to bring out more high end on this track. So this is the longer reverb. So I just went to my EQ on that and I'm adding more high end into it. Now let's listen to this. If I turn that off. Helps just a little bit. Okay. So now we have the drums dialed in. Let's go to our vocals. And with vocals, there's three effects that I want to dial in. I want to dial in a time delay. I want to dial in a slapback reverb that's stereo. And then I want to dial in just a little bit of reverb. So we're going to start with the slapback delay. I'm going to hold Option and click and drag this down. And then on here, we're just going to add delay here, stereo delay. And the idea here is that we're just going to do a super fast slapback delay, meaning that it's basically like right after he says it, it's like bouncing off the walls in a small room. And so we're going to set this to the fastest time on both of these sides. I'm going to take the left mix to 100, the right mix to 100, and then feedback down. Let's just go all the way to 0. Feedback is how many times it repeats. So if we listen to this now, and we're going to title this over here, stereo slap. If you listen to this now,
Every day the
doesn't sound like anything, but we put it with our lead vocal.
expands, but I'm still standing there.
It's like a really fast slapback. So now what I like to do is use the deviation here to offset the left and the right ears.
Dressed in my face.
Okay, that's cool now, right?
Every day we keep racing through space.
And then I like to use down here, you have high cut, low cut, right? So this would be like filtering, cutting out high frequencies and low frequencies on each side. I like to cut out some of the high frequencies.
But every day the universe expands.
And some of the low frequencies.
But I'm still standing there.
And give it kind of this warm sound. for listening to this in solo.
Every day we keep racing through space.
So now what we can do is take this and blend it up into our vocal.
But I'm so stuck in place. So stuck in place.
All right, let's listen in the context of the mix and dial it in here. And let's start in this verse, actually.
Lost my last job, can't lose this one. All day long, I get no work done. All day long, I get what have I done?
So I love this because it just sounds like a really, really small space, but it's very contained sounding, and it adds a lot of warmth to this vocal.
Lost my last job,
If I turn it off,
lose this one. All day long, I get no work done.
Back
All
on.
day long, I get what have I done?
right? Subtle, but it definitely helps fill out that vocal. It takes it from kind of a lonely vocal to a slightly fuller, wider vocal. All right, we're going to hold Option, click, and drag this down again. I'm also going to go ahead and change the color of these just so I can tell them apart really quickly. And we're going to call this one timed delay. And here I'm just going to set up, change the stereo delay for a tape delay. And I just want a quarter delay, so it already is defaulted on the right one. Let's listen to this in solo.
Prove my worth with a nice apartment. Maybe then I'll find a partner.
Cool. Sounds great. I'm going to filter it with the low cut, high cut just a little bit. And then I'm going to take the dry down to 0, wet up to 100. And now this track again is a parallel just delay track that I can blend in. So let's listen to this here.
But I'm still standing there, dressed in my face. Every day we keep racing through space. But
Cool. And then what I like about parallel tracks is now I can also get crazy with this and like, let's try distorting it a little bit. So let's run this through a pedal board.
every day that
Let's throw, I really like this grit. Let's throw this grit on it. This is just a distortion pedal.
every day the universe expands. But I'm still standing there, dressed in my face.
That's pretty cool.
Every day we keep racing through space. But I'm so stuck in place.
Okay,
So stuck in place.
that's pretty cool. Okay, so now let's blend it up in. It's a little bit loud right now.
Every day the universe expands.
Let's do this in the context of the mix. Let's start in this verse here.
My last job, can't lose this one. All day long, I get no work done. All day long, I get what have I done? My work with a nice apartment, maybe then I'll
Cool. Let's listen in the chorus.
every day the universe expands, but I'm still standing here, dressed in my face. Every day we keep racing through space, but I'm so stuck in place.
Okay, I dig it. Okay, so we can automate both of those up and down when we get to automation, which is the next video. But for now, we're just going to get kind of like the generally good level. And then we're going to do one more, and this is going to be a reverb. So I'm holding Option and clicking and dragging this down again. I'm changing this out and titling it Reverb. And we're going to take off the delay and change it out for that space designer. And we're going to take off the pedal board. Okay, so now we have a reverb track here. Let's go and bring the volume up here.
Every day the universe expands.
And honestly, that's a good reverb right off the bat. Just the default setting. I like it a lot. Let's try something a little bit smaller, though. And let's try a plate. So let's try vocal ambience. What does this sound like?
Every day the universe expands, but I'm still standing there, dressed in my face.
I kind of like that. What does that sound like in the mix?
Every day the universe expands, but I'm still standing there.
Is this in the verse here?
Every day, lost my last job, can't lose this one. All day long, I get no work done. All day long, I get what have I done?
I don't know. How do you feel about that reverb? Let me know in the comments. I think I like it. Let's try one more. So right now we're on this vocal ambience. Let's bring this up here and let's listen to one other. I like it. There's something kind of cool, like small room about it. Let's try bright plate.
Can't lose this one all day long.
It's
I
really
get
bright.
no work done all day long. I get what have I done?
It sounds nice.
Can't lose this one all day long. I get no work.
I like the sound of that, but I feel like it's going to make my vocal sound muddy. It's like, I don't know, muddy sounding. I actually think that this little vocal ambience,
Done all day long.
let's just compare this to one more here. Let's try it against the drum plate.
I get what have I done?
That's cool too. Let's do one more here just because I noticed. Let's try bright vocals and just see what we think.
Can't lose this one all day
It's too
long.
bright.
I get no work done all day long.
All right, I like
get what have I
ambience
done?
best. That one's good too, though. Let's do
Prove my
ambience, vocal
worth with
ambience.
a nice apartment, maybe.
There's something cool about that. Okay, let's just mix it in and find the right spot for it.
Lost my last job, can't lose this one all day long. I get no work done all day long. I get what have I done? Prove my worth with a nice apartment, maybe.
Cool. That's it. Okay, so subtle things, but let's just listen to this mix. If I just take off these 3 effects that we set up and then the 2 on the drums, and then I'm going to add them on. Let's start in the verse here and check it out.
Lost my last job, can't lose this one all day long. I get no work done all day long. I get what have I done? Prove my worth with a nice apartment, maybe that I found a partner. Prove my worth with a nice apartment, maybe that. What? Every day the universe expands. But I'm still standing here, dressed in my face. Every day we keep racing through space.
It's cool, right? It's all subtle stuff, but you can tell that it just adds together to give us a little bit more realistic space in our mix, and we're not clouding it at all. The biggest concern, the biggest and worst thing you can do is just pile on reverb and just create a cloudy, muddy mess of a mix. By doing little bits of effects, but doing them very intentionally, you can absolutely dial in a realistic space while not overdoing it. Okay, the last thing I want us to do in this video is just check again really quickly against our static mix. This is our mix of volume only. Now we've gone through the master track processing, EQ, compression, and effects. Let's listen to our mix before and after. So this is just volumes, and then when I turn off solo, it will be everything all together. Check it out.
Every day the universe expands. But I'm still standing here, dressed in my face. Every day we keep racing through space. But I'm so stuck in place, so stuck in place.
Right? It's a pretty big difference. And it's just subtle stuff that just adds together. You got to trust the process, and you got to do small little incremental changes across the way, but it all adds up to a much fuller, much wider, much more cohesive sounding final product. Okay, so that is effects. Be sure to grab the Ultimate GarageBand Guide from the link in the description below. It's really going to help you out. If this video is helpful, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.